Hi everyone, welcome to my channel and welcome back. I'm Jeannie and I know not everyone is into Halloween, so I wanted to do something a little bit different and do a little bit of a cutesy Halloween mani rather than going all in like I typically do because I absolutely love Halloween. But I wanted to give some inspo for those that really don't like the gory or scary type stuff. So I've got these beautiful colors from Color My World dips that I'm super excited to use in today's mani. The colors I'm using are from her recent release, and I did buy sample size jars just because I don't even need new dip powders, but I couldn't help myself because I really loved the colors and I love Color My World dips. And actually, I don't even think I've used her products on my channel before. I think it's been maybe a couple years. I know maybe a couple years ago for one of the months I was a guest ambassador for her, and I'll talk a little bit about that later on. But anyway, because these are sample size jars, I am using my Dipp'd in Chaos by Chaos Concepts to pour my jars into to make it easier to dip into. So I'm starting with my solid dip powders first. So this one is Clout. This is a solid black dip powder, and it is so deep and it is so pigmented. Just look at how deep and rich it is in just one dip. This is definitely a one coat coverage black because you get full opacity. I do end up doing 2 layers just because that's my normal process. It's definitely not for opacity because I reached that with one. I have to say though, after I dipped my first finger, I was a little concerned because I saw my skin and I was afraid it was going to stain. But you'll see after I finished my first layer on my index finger and pinky, after I dust off the excess powder, it actually does not stain my skin. Honestly, I forgot how good and how easy to use the Color My World dip powders are. I absolutely love them and highly recommend them if you haven't tried them. After I finished with my first layer, I went ahead and dusted off the excess powder, and as you can see, there is no staining on my skin. That black dip powder just dusted right off. So now I'm going to go ahead and go in with layer 2, and the one thing I'll mention about this is because it's such a pigmented black, and by the way, I am using my Marullo Nail Co dip liquids, what you will see as I go in with my second layer is you will see that black staining on my dip base brush. So before I return it to the bottle, I like to wipe it on that paper towel that I have laid down to remove any of that excess pigment. But you'll see that as I continue to dip, as I move on to my other colors after I'm done with my black, it kind of, the staining fades so it doesn't stay, so it doesn't impact the other dips that I do. I did have a little bit of panic though because the next colors I'm going to be using are like a really light pink and another pink, so I was afraid that I would get like that black staining on the next colors that I'm using and that I might have to switch dip bases. But it actually didn't impact it, which is a really good thing. But I did want to call that out of if you do see staining on your dip base brush, that is somewhat normal. So just make sure before you return it to your dip base bottle that you're wiping off that brush. It doesn't have to be completely removed, but you do want to remove that excess pigment before you put it in the bottle, because if you do it too much and you don't wipe it off first, you could end up contaminating your actual dip base. I feel like a really rich black dip powder or any really rich dark color that doesn't stain is something that's hard to find. And personally, if a color does stain, I'd rather have it be like a little less opaque and I can build it up with more layers and have to deal with the staining. But if I can get both like this powder, I am all for it. But anyway, I just went on a whole tangent about dark dip powders and staining, but let me get back to what I'm actually doing. So I finished up with my second layer, I dusted off the excess powder. So now I'm going to go ahead and cap it in clear. So I'm using my double dipped clear. I don't have a clear from Color My World dip, so I can't really speak to the quality, although knowing the company, knowing the quality of our products, I bet it is wonderful. So looking back on it now, I capped in clear and I activated before I moved on to my next powders, but actually I probably didn't need to because the next 2 colors I'm using aren't really glitters. So normally I'll cap in clear and activate because I don't want to contaminate my solid dip powders with any stray glitters. But they're really foils. Well, one of them's a foil and the other one has like back glitters, so they're not really like pieces of glitters. And then there's shards of something. I don't think it's a foil. I'm not sure like what kind of material it is, but I don't think that would contaminate either. And plus they're like black speckles, so even if it did contaminate, it's on a black solid nail anyway. But regardless, it is what it is. I capped in clear, activated before I moved on to my next colors. Once my dip base is fully dry, I'm going to go ahead and scrub off the excess dip powder using a stiff scrub brush. Now the double dipped clear is one of my favorites to use because putting it against a black, there's no graininess, there's no cloudiness, and I think a really good test of a clear is putting it against either a black or a glitter, and the double dipped clear never fails me. So now that I've scrubbed up the excess powder, I'm going ahead and activating my nails. And I spoke to us in a previous video when I did a first impressions of the Marullo Nail Co dip liquids. I'll leave that linked above in the cards if I can remember. If not, leave a comment and I'll link it down below. But her activator works so quickly. So now that those nails are activated, I'm going to move on to my next powder. So this is Baton Boujee, and this is what made me order from Color My World Dips again, because this is the cutest powder. Wait till you see it. So I like that it's not like jam-packed full of things. It's kind of really subtle, and that's why I have like Cutesy. So it's on a really light pink base. It has little bat glitters. It has little 4-point pink stars and then these black speckles. And that's kind of what I was talking about. I'm not sure what material those speckles are. I don't think they're foils, but it's just so cute. I love that it's not like jam-packed full of things. It's very subtle. So you can see in my first layer and even my second layer, even though I'm laying in, I don't pick up a lot of pieces because it's not going to be a busy nail. It's just going to be really subtle with pieces. So I will do like a little bit of placement when I'm done with my 2 dips just to put a little more design into it, but I don't want it like a busy nail full of other things, of elements, glitters, things like that. But you'll see. I just love this one so much though. So I mentioned it earlier in the video that I was a guest ambassador for Color My World Dips 2 years, maybe longer than that ago. I'm not really sure. It was quite a while ago, but I have to say my experience was so amazing and I absolutely loved it. I don't know if you know this about me or not, but I am very much a type A personality, and Amber, the owner of Color My World Dips, she was so proactive and she was so organized the way she had everything laid out and organized. It just spoke to me, and I think it really spoke to like her and the way she runs her company and to the quality of her dip powders. I mean, it was just such a great experience. So not just the owner, but like the quality of what she puts out. I just amazing, seriously. I showed you placing some of my glitters and such in Bat and Boujee, but I saved you most of the video of me chasing around those little pieces to fish out. So now I'm going to move on to my last color. So this is Dare Me. So Dare Me is a little bit of a darker pink than Bat and Boujee, and it has larger black foil pieces in there. The one thing I will say is these foil pieces do bleed, so you have to be really careful with it. Sometimes the bleeding foils can create a really cool look depending on what you're going for. I know some people don't like the bleeding foils. I'd say there's no really way to avoid it completely when you're using dip liquids. So you'll see that on my second layer. If you want to completely avoid the bleeding of foils, you really need to use gel method. So you need to use your gel base because that's not going to cause your foils to bleed. My second layer, when I started to apply my dip base with the little bit of foils that were on my nail, that's when I noticed they actually do bleed. So there are ways to help minimize the bleeding, but you can't completely avoid it with the dip base. So in order to minimize the bleeding, it's really better to kind of float your dip base brush. So what I mean by floating your dip base brush is you don't want to drag it against the nail. For the most part, if you can avoid the brush directly touching your nail and brushing against those foils. So in order to do that, you do need a little more dip base. So normally when I do the dipping process, I say apply a thin, even layer of dip base. You want to use a little bit more dip base, and that way it's really the dip base touching your nail and not your brush, if that makes sense. So your brush is just floating on top of the dip base, and the dip base is dragging against your nail against those foils. And that kind of helps reduce the bleeding of the foils, and you don't want to linger as well. You want to be fairly quick about it. So I finished up my second dip. I decided I wanted just a little bit more foil, so I'm just kind of very carefully applying a little bit of a dip base, like over half my nail, because that's where I feel like I want a little bit more of those foils. I'll place a couple more pieces of foil. And then when I go to cap and clear, that's when I want to be really careful because I have more of those black foils against my nail. So that's when I really want to float my brush. I don't want to linger. I want to be fairly quick about it when I'm applying my dip base over this. Generally, I always cap all my nails in clear regardless of the type of dip powder that I'm using, but if you're typically not one of those people who cap your nails in clear unless it's a glitter, or maybe not at all, if you don't want your foils to bleed, you need to cap them in clear or gel base and top coat or something, because if you apply activator directly on those foils, they will bleed even worse. So make sure that you're capping your foils in clear as well. I went ahead and filed and buffed my nails off camera, and I love the way this is all coming together. So now we're going to get into my favorite part, which is the dip top coat. So in order for your top coat to dry, it does need a layer of activator. So I'm going to apply one final layer of activator to my nails. I'm going to wait a full 2 minutes for my activator to dry, and then I'm going to go in with my top coat. For my first layer of dip top coat, I'm going to apply it in 2 to 3 swipes on each nail. I want to be fairly quick about it. In between each nail, I want to make sure that I'm wiping my brush on a lint-free wipe to remove any excess activator before returning my brush to the bottle, because I don't want to harden my brush. And then once I'm done with my 5th nail, I'll be ready to go in with my second layer of dip top coat. So I don't wait, I just go ahead and go straight in with my second layer. For my second layer, I want to make sure that my nail is fully covered. I can take a couple more swipes if needed, and I also want to make sure that I'm capping my free edge. As a side note, how adorable are these cat-shaped lint-free wipes that I found? I honestly thought they'd be like more of novelty, decorative, not really useful, but surprisingly, they're actually thicker than some of the lint-free wipes that I've bought, so I'm really happy to start using them. I'll leave them linked down below in the description if you want to check them out, because they are so cute and they actually work really well. As always, I'm going to finish off my mani by rehydrating my cuticles with my Scales of Mermaid Cuticle Oil. And I'm super excited that Show Me Your Fishy Face has made the main line. So if you remember, Show Me Your Fishy Face was a limited edition scent maybe June, July, a couple months ago. I don't remember when. But I fell in love with it as soon as I smelled it, and I have been campaigning ever since to make this main line. Of course, with the help of other members of the group and ambassadors, because it is just that good, and it is finally mainline. So you can now get it in a dropper bottle, you can get it in cuticle balms, I believe, and I am just super excited. This is definitely a must-have scent. So anyway, that pretty much wraps up today's video. I wanted to do a cutesy, non-traditional Halloween mani for those that don't really like Halloween. This is hopefully a little bit of inspo for you. So I hope this video is helpful. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, I'd appreciate it if you gave this video a thumbs up. It lets me know to continue creating content like this. And it also helps YouTube recommend me to others, which helps grow my channel. And if you haven't already, please consider subscribing. I upload content every Monday and Thursday at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. As always, I appreciate you being here. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.